Ours at the scene at Melville Drive in Finglas in North Dublin, where a young mother was stabbed to death in her apartment yesterday. Gardaí from the Technical Bureau have carried out a full examination of the apartment and surrounding areas, and investigators have been carrying out door-to-door inquiries to gather as much information as they can about the sequence of events here yesterday afternoon.
Today our story brings us to Finglas. Finglas is a northwestern outer suburb of Dublin. Nearby villages include Glasnevin and Ballymun, and it is around 7 kilometres from Dublin Airport. On Saturday, the 17th of April 2021, the Poole family's world fell down around them. Jennifer was 24 years old when her life was taken from her in the most horrendous of circumstances. Her brother would say, "Why didn't you tell us what was going on in your life? Why did you go through that on your own?" They could have helped. But she is not going to answer those questions because she didn't answer those questions when she was alive. Jennifer loves sports, especially camogie, which is the female version of hurling. She played for Erin's Isle GAA and was a very good player. It was a very big part of her life. Her sister Claire would say she was a crazy kid, but she was good. She loved life, she loved going out with her friends and loved music. You'd hear her coming down the road before you saw her, as she was always having the music blaring. Jennifer had her first child when she was 17, when she was doing her leaving cert. She took 3 weeks out of school and then went back and did her exams. She then had her second child and went back and did her college courses. She got a job in a local nursing home and she loved it. She loved her children so much. She did everything for them. There was nothing they ever needed or wanted for. In fact, her brother would say they got too much really. She had brought them on their first foreign holiday before lockdown, and she was very proud of that. Being a young mother and being able to support them as a single mother was very important to her. In May 2020, Jennifer started seeing Gavin Murphy. In the beginning, the family were happy that she had found someone. Jennifer had told the family that he had been away in Spain and had just come home when they met. But in actual fact, he had been just released from prison after assaulting his then girlfriend and her mother, where a knife had been produced. But Jennifer and her family were not to know this. Jennifer's brother would say, if Jennifer had known this, she would not have had anything to do with him, and she definitely wouldn't have moved him in with herself and her 2 children. As time went on, Jennifer would change. She would make excuses not to attend family events. Her personality changed. She stopped going to the gym and stopped playing camogie. She went from being this big, bright, bubbly girl that would always have a smile on her face, but this was lost. At times, members of her family saw bruises on Jennifer's arms and face, and they'd question her, but she'd always give a viable excuse, from injuries due to playing camogie to the children hitting her by mistake with a superhero toy. Claire, her sister, did intervene and spoke to Jennifer, telling her Murphy was no good for her and that she needed to get rid of him. This is after she heard that Jennifer had cut her leg from a blade that was in Murphy's work bag that she was carrying in for him into the house. There was always an explanation, and it went on and on. He had moved into her house not long after they met, which is very telling. There was a quick intensity in the relationship. Love bombing comes to mind, which soon turned to abuse both physically and emotionally. He became controlling and had Jennifer under fear that if she left, he threatened to harm her family. He told her he had access to guns and that he'd use them. Jennifer's brother intervened also and spoke to her about getting Murphy out of her life. And finally Jennifer listened and she agreed that she needed to move on. She went home, packed his bags and ended the relationship. Jennifer then organised to go out with her friends that night. Her family took the 2 children. She put on her makeup and got dressed up. She was finally rid of Murphy and was planning to get her life back on track. She was happy, but even that night she had bruising. But her friends and family didn't question her, as she was happy, and the family felt that it would be the last time they would see her in this state. It was the first time that they had seen makeup on her in a long time, and a smile on her face. Little did they all know that it was the last night they would see her alive. The next day she would be dead. The next morning, Saturday the 17th of April 2021, it was a beautiful day, the sun was shining and Jennifer decided to bring the children to the beach with her family. That morning, Jennifer was text messaging back and forth with Murphy. He was saying that he needed a shower and asked could he shower in her place. Jennifer, being the big softie she was, agreed. When he arrived to have the shower, Jennifer left the apartment, obviously still in fear of Murphy, that she didn't want to be in the apartment with him. So she went outside and sat in the car with her son while Murphy took a shower. Her daughter was still with relatives from the night before, but she needed clothes. Jennifer then took the decision to go back into the apartment while Murphy was still there, and this is when he would attack. Jennifer left her son in the car, and as soon as Jennifer entered the apartment, Murphy attacked her with a knife. Her son and the neighbour would hear the cries for help and the screams. The neighbour left her apartment and took Jennifer's 4-year-old son into her apartment and locked the door. Next, she would go to help Jennifer, banging on the door and trying to break it down. She looked through the letterbox and saw Murphy standing over Jennifer with a knife. She saw drag marks of blood on the floor. She begged Murphy to let her in, but Murphy told her to feck off and refused to unlock the door. The neighbour could see Jennifer slumped in the hallway, and Jennifer screamed at her to kick the door in, but she didn't have the strength and there was nothing she could do. Eventually the neighbour rang the Gardaí for help, and meanwhile Murphy went into the bedroom, got dressed and fled over the balcony at the back of the apartment. Within 9 to 10 minutes of Jennifer entering the apartment, she was dead. Jennifer's sister Claire was on her way up to the apartment to collect the clothes for Jennifer's daughter. When she turned into the housing estate, there was Gardaí everywhere. Claire and her mother jumped out of the car and ran towards the apartment where Jennifer lived, and the neighbour was on the steps screaming and shouting, "He's after stabbing her." The Gardaí stopped Claire and her mother from going into the apartment, and they begged them to see her and promised not to touch her. Jennifer was brought straight away to Connolly's Hospital in Blanchardstown and was pronounced dead a short while later. She had suffered 7 stab wounds, 14 defence wounds and a dislocated finger, dying from blood loss and shock. When the family arrived at the hospital and got to see her eventually, they didn't get to hug or kiss her goodbye, as Jennifer was now evidence to her own murder. It was also realised at the post-mortem that she had 88 old wounds, not consistent with her death. Family knew that Jennifer was suffering under Murphy, but had no idea that he was capable of murder.
At around 2:10, Gardaí responded to a call. Neighbours had heard screams and a man was seen jumping from the woman's balcony. When emergency services got to the first floor apartment, they discovered mother of 2, 24-year-old Jenny Poole. She had sustained a stab wound to the neck. It's understood her young son was in the apartment at the time. Jenny was rushed to James Connolly Memorial Hospital in Blanchardstown but was pronounced dead a short time later. In the meantime, Gardaí arrested the man in his late 20s who was seen jumping from the balcony, and he was taken for questioning on suspicion of her murder.
Soon after Jennifer's death, the family went to her apartment to clear it out, and the full extent of how she was living was realised. There were a lot of knives hidden around the house, in drawers, presses and down the side of her bed. Even where she slept every night, she didn't feel safe. This brings you to ask, what kind of life did she live? Why didn't she ask for help? And more importantly, what kind of control did Murphy have over Jennifer? That she couldn't tell her family and friends. Was it because she didn't know what would happen next? I guess the answer is in the question. Jennifer put on a brave face, a smile and a front in order to protect her family. Jennifer's funeral took place on Tuesday the 27th of April 2021 at St. Canice's Church in Finglas Village, and was attended by her children, her parents, brothers and sisters. Hundreds of mourners gathered on the streets of Finglas to pay their respects. A guard of honour was provided by Erin's Isle GAA Club and Benavine Lodge Care Home, where she worked. Offertory gifts included a hurl and a helmet, boxing gloves, an M&M CD, her ID badge from work, makeup, a statue of an angel and family photographs. A GoFundMe was set up in order to help pay for the funeral and help with the children's future. €42,000 was raised by the Sunday night after she died. People were more than generous. Jennifer was laid to rest in Glasnevin Cemetery. An hour after the killing, Murphy was apprehended at his uncle's house, thanks to the neighbour identifying him. He told Gardaí in an interview that a row broke out when Jennifer entered the apartment. She pulled a knife on him and then he blacked out, not remembering stabbing Jennifer multiple times. He said he couldn't even look at her and that he left and went to Poppintree Park. In a prepared statement after his arrest, he took responsibility for the killing, but that he didn't plan to kill her and that he truly loved her. Oh, give me strength. He told Gardaí, "I'm really sorry and I didn't want this to happen." He was later charged and he pleaded guilty to murder. He told the court in April 2022 that he pleaded guilty to spare the family a trial and to show his remorse. Upon sentencing, it was revealed to the judge that Murphy had 13 previous convictions, including an assault with a deadly weapon on his ex-girlfriend and her mother, having a phone while in custody, assault causing harm, robbery and criminal damage. This was completely shocking to the Poole family. They had no idea. Murphy was sentenced to life in prison and the family were left to pick up the pieces. But while Murphy claimed to be sorry for killing Jennifer, while on remand he was not a model prisoner, and this continued on after his life sentence was passed down. While on remand in Clover Hill Prison following his arrest, he was repeatedly disciplined for physically abusing other inmates, smashing up prison property and threatening prison officers. In May of 2021, he was disciplined for smashing up his TV in his prison cell. Yes, prisoners have their own TV in their cells. In February 2022, he again threatened prison officers and other cellmates. After his conviction, he was moved to Mountjoy Prison, but he continued to try and be the hard man. Eventually, though, he was moved to the high security prison in Portlaoise, and let's just say the prisoners and the staff there have a good relationship and they don't want the boat rocked. A prison officer's source said that Murphy tried to be the hard man in Mountjoy, but when he got to Portlaoise, it was a lot different for him there. He's as quiet as a mouse and afraid for his life. Murphy was told by the Canaan cartel and the Republican prisoners to behave or he would be killed. He has hardly opened his mouth since he got there and is now behaving like a model prisoner. Murphy has been up in court since his conviction for incidents before he murdered Jennifer. Any sentencing he has received will run concurrently as he is serving a life sentence. So basically it doesn't add anything onto his sentence, even though he'll probably only serve 15 to 20 years, as life does not mean life here in Ireland. When it came out in court that Murphy had served time for domestic violence, the family were distraught. When Murphy was sentenced and the Poole family knew he was safely locked away, they started a campaign to have a domestic violence register put together by the Justice Minister, to make it law that anyone convicted of domestic violence will be put on a register, much like the sex offender register. It should be made available to the Gardaí, if not the public. This law would be called Jennifer's Law. Gardaí have a duty of care, and if they had been able to put Murphy's name in the system, they would have seen his previous convictions and warned Jennifer of the dangers she was potentially in. Figures released in December 2022 show that there was 45,257 reports of domestic abuse, a 9% increase of the same period in 2021. Since 2020, incidents of coercive control have risen steadily, with a total of 481 recorded. More than half of all murders in Ireland in 2021 were the results of domestic violence. We really need to do better. Rather than ask the question, why don't women just leave? How about we ask, why don't these men just stop their behaviour?